I just beat Chrono Trigger for the first time in my life, really played it for the first time in my life, and beat it in 30 hours here in 2025, 30 years after this game came out, chat. This was an incredible game. You already know I'm going to glaze it. This game has a sterling reputation. As long as this game has existed, I've always heard about how good it is. I remember when Chrono Trigger released, I was 10 years old. I was born in 85. This game released in 95. So I was like just turned 10 years old when this game came out. I remember seeing it in like Blockbuster Video when I was walking around, and I always wanted to rent it. I always wanted to play it, but at the time when I was around that age, I was super heavy into sports games and fighting games, playing against my dad. The actual first like real RPG that I played, it was technically Final Fantasy just 1, just the original Final Fantasy on NES. But I played that when I was, you know, like 7, 8, 9 years old or whatever. I didn't know what the fuck was going on. I didn't know how to play it. I just got like destroyed in that game and never ended up finishing it. I later played Super Mario RPG, and that was the first RPG that I ever really played. I was probably still around that age. I mean, Super Mario RPG released in what, 99? So was I like 4? When did Super Mario RPG come out? It released the next year in 1996. And so I missed Chrono Trigger, so I ended up playing Mario RPG, guys, and I fell in love with that game. Still to this day, my favorite video game of all time, purely on like what it did for me and my love of gaming and the nostalgia with it. I fell in love with that game. I fell in love with Star Ocean: The Second Story, Saga Frontier, just from there forward, like a lot of, you know, JRPGs and stuff. Coming back now 30 years later to Chrono Trigger and playing this game, I can see how this game influenced so many other Japanese and turn-based RPGs that I love. And when they say that this game was created by like a dream team, it was can't say their names, but the guy from Final Fantasy, Dragon Ball, and Dragon Quest. They knocked it out of the park. This is one of the greatest games I ever played. It was so far ahead of its time. Great NPCs, great world building, incredible soundtrack, battle system was great. We just played Expedition 33, and everybody knows that like as far as like modern turn-based combat, like that is S tier. Even coming back to this game that was made in 95, it still is incredible in terms of its combat. I love the fact that like there's enemies that have shields and you have to wait because animations are constantly playing during battle. You have to wait for them to move the shield and then attack them. I fucking love that concept. I can't think of other games that were released at this time that were doing similar stuff. I'm sure they existed. Enemies moving around during the turn-based combat, not just being like static in one space, but moving around, and then you wait until they get closer or farther away to attack them. If you attack them when they're too close, they might counterattack you. And if they're too far away, some of your special skills won't land because they're AoE based on proximity. So much of this stuff is like so ahead of its time, chat. Puzzle combat game, yeah, Contra, yeah, there's a lot of puzzle combat to the turn-based combat, and it keeps the player engaged. I never got bored of this game. I also really admire the fact that this game was just an incredibly tight 30 hours. The pacing never felt sluggish. It never felt like it was full of like filler content. There's so many modern RPGs that are just loaded with like filler content so they can advertise it as having like 80 hours worth of like campaign, 80 hours of story, you know, you'll sink 150 hours into this RPG. Don't get me wrong. I did that with Persona 5. I didn't regret an hour. I love Persona 5. So I'm not saying that it's always bad. I've always believed that a game should never drag out its runtime. It should just be as peak as it can be, as perfect as it can be, for as long as it can maintain that, you know, momentum. And then when it's time to wrap it up, wrap it up. If it's 15 hours, if it's 30 hours, if it's 50 hours, if it's more. And this was perfect. It was entertaining the whole way through. It had all sorts of different tone shifts. There were times where it was like really, really serious. There were moments that were like tearjerker moments. Even during my ending, there were moments that were really serious, and then they hit you with like, you know, little jokes in there, which, you know, without spoiling anything, I just will say I was very, very happy with the ending that I got for this game. I felt very satisfied when the credits rolled. Played the Steam version. We had the extra, you know, cutscenes and stuff like that. It was excellent, man. And there's twists and turns with this story that I feel like are executed very, very well. It never felt like this game did something just to do it. You know what I mean? For a game that involves time travel, they really could just throw a lot of shit in there, whether it makes sense or not. And they didn't do that. That's one thing I really respect about Chrono Trigger. Everything still makes sense. If you go back in the past and you do something, you alter some historical event and then go back to the future, you see how that plays out exactly the way that you as the player are going to want to see it. They really made everything make sense. I think that's one of the reasons why this game is 30 hours, because it had to be a nightmare trying to make sure that everything fell in line, that when you do something in a timeline or you change the timeline here, it makes sense when you go back here, or when you go to the future here. It all has to make sense. I feel like what they did here was, instead of going long, they went wide. They went with depth over just sheer size. And man, that is just some sus language for me to use. I've done one playthrough of this game, and I feel like I've seen maybe 50% of this game. This is definitely a game that encourages you to replay it, to see all the different ways that things can play out, because there's so many different decisions that you get to make in the past, the present, the future, with how you fight the boss, with how you fight the end boss, with who you engage with, who's in your party, who's not in your party, who you kill, who you let live. Because there's all these decisions, and they're all big decisions, and they're all meaningful decisions, and they affect every other part of the game, it wouldn't make sense for this game to be longer than it is. It makes total sense for this game to be 20 to 30 hours, and you can just replay it 5 or 10 times and see all the different ways that things can play out, all the different stories that this game has to offer, all of the different twists and turns. You know, I said it earlier, if you love modern RPGs, modern gaming in general, I mean, even if RPGs aren't your thing, I still think you got to put some fucking respect on this game, for real. It really feels like they gave every party member shine. Every party member got their flowers. Every party member had their side stories and had their own personality, even their differences in combat. I wanted to have everyone in my party. Like, I know I was probably annoying chat. I was constantly rotating party members in and out because I just wanted to play with everybody. I really liked all of the party members, and I think that RPGs like this, turn-based RPGs, they're absolutely brutal if they don't have good party members. I really want to talk about Chrono, because I feel like Chrono is probably like the most divisive party member in a lot of ways, because, you know, he's a silent protagonist, he doesn't speak, he's kind of like the self-insert for the player, but I just feel like Chrono served his purpose in the game perfectly, in my opinion. I think that it would have been hard for the developers to give the player so much freedom with the choices that you make in the game if Chrono had this set personality or was constantly speaking and this way or that way. I think that the silent protagonist and the kind of blank slate approach that they kind of took with Chrono is what allows you as the player to experiment so much without feeling like some kind of disservice is being done to the main character, being done to the story, or being done to the lore, you know? There's a lot of times where I'm playing a game where you have a set protagonist and you're given options, and I think to myself, well, it would be fun to do option A, but it's clear to me that option B is what this character would do. Obviously, this character has an identity. I can see it. I can observe it. So when I see this situation, I feel like I know what this character would do. So I feel kind of obligated if I want to see like the canon story, or if I want to see like what I feel is the canon story or the main story, the head canon, whatever, right? Then like maybe if I do another playthrough, I can try option A. I feel like because they made the decision to have Chrono as kind of like a blank slate for you, the player, to self-insert, it gives you a lot more freedom without feeling pressured to play the game a certain way. And I just think that's what I liked about it a lot. I never felt pressured to decide one thing or the other with Chrono because he's there for you as the player. I feel like that was the right decision. Soundtrack was incredible. For me, I think Frog's theme was still my favorite, but there were so many goated, heavy-hitting tracks in this. I'm glad that I waited 30 years to finally play this game, and waiting all of this time and finally playing it in 2025, it did not hurt my experience at all, chat. I loved this game every bit as much now as I think I would have then. I'm just really happy that I got to play it now. The experiences that I've had as a gamer, like my whole life playing video games, to sit down with this game, I feel like I'm able to have more appreciation for Chrono Trigger playing it now. You know, this is a game that I paid whatever I paid to get it. Definitely wasn't $80 or $100. There's no deluxe edition for $150. There's no battle pass. There's no bullshit DLC. It's just a game, and it's just made with so much love and care. Man, it really is art. And I'm glad I got to share it with you guys, and I'm glad that it's on this channel forever. So yeah, that's pretty much how I feel about it, man. It wasn't perfect, obviously, but for when it was released and for what it is, I think it's incredible. For me, this would definitely be a 10 out of 10 game, taking into account when it was released.